magnificent. The VT Commodore was a pretty big deal back in the late 1990s. It was the first Holden in decades to be engineered for left-hand drive and right-hand drive. So with sedan, with a wagon, with a ute, which came later on, this generation car was also engineered for all-wheel drive, and it had a two-door ute and a four-door ute, and there was a coupe version, and there was long wheelbase, and with all the left, man, I need to slow down. Get back to basics. When Holden launched the VT Commodore in winter of 1997, it was an instant hit. It's a good-looking car. It was styled here in Australia by a team led by the talented and respected Michael Simcoe. Of course, by the late 1990s, all Holdens had body-coloured bumper bars, but the VT had just the right blend of beauty and brawn. Oh, magnificent! The base engine in VT Commodore was a 3.8 litre V6, naturally aspirated with 147 kilowatts. This engine was tied to a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed auto transmission. This engine wasn't new for VT, it had been introduced in VS, so it was a relatively fresh design for the VT. There was also a supercharged V6 motor offered in VT. It was 171 kilowatts, I think, instead of 147. That was offered as an option in the S, the Calais and the SS, which comes as a surprise to a lot of people. The VT was also the last hurrah for Holden's all-Australian V8. Introduced in 1969, the engine got a really big freshen up for the 1989 VN Commodore, new cylinder heads and fuel injection. For the VT, Holden gave it another little freshen up with a roller cam, low tension piston rings and a bit of extra stuff on the front of the engine to give it a fresh last run to the finish line in 1999. This car is an HSV Senator fitted with the optional 220 kilowatt HSV version, 5.7 litres of all Aussie grunt. This, boys and girls, is pretty much peak VT. As I mentioned earlier, the VT Commodore, this generation car, was the first Holden in decades to be engineered for both left-hand drive and right-hand drive. And us car magazine journos, we knew that back in the late 90s because we started to see spy pics of Commodores left-hand drive and wearing Chevrolet badges. Of course, that meant that we all talked about over our morning coffees of the Commodore going to America as a Chevrolet. It didn't go to America straight away, but it did go to the Middle East as the new Chevrolet Lumina. And later on, when the Statesman came out, the long wheelbase VT, if you like, that went to the Middle East as the Chevrolet Caprice. That gave Holden volumes, it kept a lot of Aussies employed, it was great for the Australian industry, and it's something that we can all be proud of. Later in the VT generation's life, in VY, I think it was, there was an announcement of all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive model Commodores, and that was quite astonishing. What we ended up getting was a four-wheel drive wagon, the Holden Adventurer, and also two-door and four-door all-wheel drive commercial vehicles. That meant with all the different models of Commodores, short wheelbase and long wheelbase and export and left-hand drive and right-hand drive, that there was about 55, I think, different variations of the one car. It was pretty impressive stuff for Holden, and it was all masterminded by the managing director back in the day, Peter Hannenberger, the leader of Holden, and he did a pretty good job. The car we're driving today is a VT2. With the later VX, V2, VY and VZ variants, this was easily the most diverse and possibly the most important Holden generation ever created. But the real fairy tale of this generation Commodore was a story that happened in 1998, Sydney Motor Show, and the covers came off a show car known as the Concept Coupe, VT Concept Coupe. This car was created in absolute secrecy by Michael Simcoe and some of his team at Holden in Melbourne. Not even the bosses knew about it. And it blew us all away at the Sydney Motor Show. It was a really, really pretty car. That car, of course, became the new Monaro. But that's a story for another time. I'm happy to tell it to you later. Anyway, I'm Glenn Torrens. You've been watching Addicted to Cars. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time. Cheers. Oh, look at that, magnificent. Powering the VT Commodore was a 3.8 litre naturally aspirated V6. Let's do that again.